We have our penultimate reader of the evening. Irma Olmedo is a retired professor from the University of Illinois Chicago. She has published extensively on bilingualism, education, immigration, academic research journals, and is now using her research background and lived experience to write short stories focused on the Puerto Rican migration and diaspora. Give it up for Irma.
Hi, it's great to be here. When I walked in the door, they said, "Oh, you're one of the performers." And I thought, no, I'm not here to perform. But then I thought, if we're teachers, we're always performing. And if we're a teacher of teachers, we're performing even more. So, but I'm going to read this pretty straight. And it is based on a true experience. And it's called Cristina and Carlos. Boy, is this an exciting conference, I said to the young man standing in line ahead of me to pick up some guisado, tortillas, and frijoles. I can't believe the incredible range of workshops here and the creative ideas that these teachers are presenting. I need to invite some of these teachers to my teacher ed classes to share what they've been able to do in their own classrooms in spite of poor leadership from administrators or cynical colleagues. My students sure can use these examples as they prepare to become teachers themselves. The young man agreed. Yeah, it really is a great conference. This is my first time, and I'm blown away by what I've seen and heard. I especially like the sessions on teaching history, he added, because they select topics we rarely get into in our regular classes. But they still find ways to link them up with the same themes, like ones dealing with bullying of gay kids and connections to the civil rights movement. I've never made those connections, but I could see it might be a good way to get kids interested in amendments to the Constitution and a whole bunch of other issues. We were at the end of the line of the delicious local food and could smell the salsas throughout the room. I hope we can find a table, I said. This place is pretty crowded. As we proceeded to walk around the gym, almost all the cafeteria tables were full. Only one spot appeared to be available at a large table. Profesora, the young man said, why don't you sit here and I'll see if I can bring over a chair. Thanks, I said, surprised that he addressed me as Profesora. We hadn't even exchanged names as we focused on filling our plates with the meat, the tortillas, the salsa, and the guacamole. I sat down at the table. Everyone seemed to know each other, all chatting at the same time, the buzzing noise drowning out the specifics of what people were saying. I must be getting old, I thought to myself. It was hard to hear what even the people sitting next to me were saying. Oh well, to eat now, I thought. Of course, it would be fun if some of my former students were here and came over to introduce themselves. I'd love to hear their teaching and how they're doing. The young man who had been standing in front of me online didn't return. He probably found a spot at another table or met up with some friends. This place sure is crowded. And if he has friends and colleagues here, I'm sure he'd prefer to sit with them than some women he doesn't even know. As I was finishing my tacos, he showed up again, dragging over a chair. I found some friends at another table, he said. May I join you now for dessert? Sure, be my guest, I replied. Now that I was able to talk to him face to face, I had a strange feeling that he looked somewhat familiar. After teaching for almost 20 years at the university, that wasn't an unusual experience. Even in such a large city like Chicago, I occasionally encountered former students. I always apologized for not remembering names, but they understood that I had many more names to remember than they did. Would you rather have the flan or the churros, Profesora? The young man asked. I can go back and get some for us. Flan, of course, I volunteered. I always ate more than I should at these events, and it would be easier to control the calories in the flan than in the churros. So, are you a teacher in CPS? I asked when he returned. What do you teach? Yes, I am. I teach high school history. I really like my school and I like the students. You seem awfully young to be teaching high school. Do some of your students sometimes confuse you with their peers? Yeah, that happens sometimes. But most of the upperclassmen know me already. Word gets around quickly about who I am. How do you like teaching history? Was that always a favorite subject of yours? Oh, I like it now, but it hadn't been one of my favorites. In my high school experience, it was one of the boring classes. Too much memorizing names and dates and isolated facts. I couldn't put it all together, and I always wondered what it had to do with me. I'm glad those days are over. So I assume you're able to teach it differently to your students? Are they as bored as you were, or have you found that you're able to make it more interesting to them? Well, I had a great mentor teacher whom the students love. She was my cooperating teacher during my student teaching, and she changed my whole way of seeing history. If it hadn't been for her, I might be teaching the same way that I was taught. Did you attend college in Chicago or somewhere else? I asked. The pages are sticking to each other. Actually, I graduated from UIC several years ago, he said. I also had some good history teachers there. I think that's why I decided to teach the subject. Oh, you're a UIC graduate. I teach in the Teacher Ed program there. Attending these conferences keeps me up to date on what's happening in the schools. Yes, I know you teach at UIC. In fact, you were one of my professors. I especially liked your class on immigration. Even though my family was undocumented, I learned a lot of things I didn't know from your class. Several undocumented students organized a Dreamers fundraising event one semester. It felt good to be able to come out rather than continue hiding our undocumented status. It made us feel freer to be ourselves. So you were my student, really? I thought you looked a little familiar, but I'm afraid that sometimes I have a hard time remembering former students' names. I'm sorry about that. Well, you may not remember me because you knew me as Cristina. He paused for a while as if trying to decide how to continue. I'm no longer Cristina. I'm Carlos now. Maybe that's why I look a little familiar. I'm not totally done with my transition. Oh, I said, trying not to appear too shocked. We had dealt with LBGT issues in our ed courses, but mainly to raise the awareness level of our students. This, however, was my first time personally encountering the trans world. I never felt like Cristina, Carlos explained. And when I finally graduated and realized that I could be who I really was, I decided to pursue that route. Coming out as undocumented gave me the courage to take this step. This was indeed a new experience for me, but I tried to continue the conversation in a matter-of-fact way. And are you getting support in your school with your colleagues? What about your students? That must be quite a challenge. Actually, it's been easier than I thought it would be, Carlos said. As I said, it's a great school, and I love my students. My problems have more to do with missed homework and cell phones in class than sexual identity. And what about your family? How have they responded? Well, my mom has come around. My dad still hasn't gotten there, but he's trying. It's a big road for him to cross. I have 3 older brothers, and I was always his little girl. All of a sudden, we were interrupted by the bell and the announcement that the keynote speaker was about to start. I gave Carlos a big abrazo, and I wished him well. Great to see you, and continue to enjoy your teaching. Please stay in touch. I have the same UIC email address. And don't give up on your dad. Parents generally come around. I still had 1,000 questions for Carlos. In over 20 years of teaching, this was my first experience with a transgender student and a Latino at that, or so I thought. But I could be wrong. I hope that his colleagues continue to provide a safe space where he can be himself, and that the administration of his school continues to support him to become an excellent teacher.